He was very poor his own youth. He was raised in enormous poverty, my father. And he'd go to London just to look at the old house he lived in with his mother. That was a sad little place. And he always felt, he couldn't help having feelings about his old country there. He'd walk the streets sometimes and look, well, I used to go here and there. Except that in that time it changed so much, it was difficult to say I grew up here.
It made me remember how bitter my tears were when I was 12, and I saw it for the first time. The same bitter taste in my mouth, the same emotions watching Limelight. I saw it again recently. I think we all suffer from some sort of emotional subjection to the movie. I know I do.
Mrs. Allsop's out! Miss Allsop's out!
It was all an evocation of the melancholy and insular world of London that he remembered, and both loved and hated, of course, because he had, as you know, been in workhouse, he and his brother Sidney, as children. I mean, they'd been completely destitute. And when you go to that part of Kennington now, which is now being gentrified, even when I was young, it was pretty dreadful.
Headache?
Where am I?
You're in my room. I live 2 floors above you.
What happened?
Well, I came home this evening and smelled gas coming from your room, so I broke in the door, called a doctor, and together we brought you up here.
Why didn't you let me die?
It was a young English actress with a classical training, Claire Bloom, who was brought to Chaplin's attention.
The Honorable Lady of the House, which is she?
Speak to me, I shall answer for her.
On Chaplin's invitation, she was to come to New York to do a screen test.
He wanted me to bring a chaperone because he'd had quite enough trouble with young girls. So I came with my mother. When we arrived, very nervous about meeting Chaplin. You can imagine. He was at the airport to meet us. He was extremely beautiful. Wonderful white hair. He was very blue eyes. People always think he had dark eyes, but they weren't. These and beautiful, expressive hands. From that moment on, I was not frightened of him. And we worked every day, and then we went to a costumier's, and that was where he said to me, wear this shawl. My mother wore a shawl like that. My mother wore a skirt like that. And I realized he was focusing, a horrible word, he was remembering and incorporating into the character both his mother and Una, his wife, and I think all the lost young women of his childhood.
In contrast to the tramp who fell in love with young girls but was never loved in return, Calvero in Limelight, an older tramp, afforded himself the luxury of awakening in these girls the most tender of loves.
If you remember the scene where they walk along the embankment and she says, I love you, that's all that matters. I felt so strongly that this was his wish.
Us.
Yes. Us. You and me. Together.
She is lying, and deep inside, she knows she is. He knows Terry is lying, and we know he knows. It's all sort of staged. Calvero is overwhelmed by the affection shown to him at the end of his life. A 20-year-old girl telling this man of 60 or more, "Let's get married. I love you." However, the incredible amount of affection she shows him equals the amount of humiliation that Calvero must feel. He knows only too well that she would marry him out of mere pity, not love. His smile makes us cry.
Chaplin had first of all written Limelight as a novel, Footlights, in which he had indulged in sentimentality. The story very gradually became a film script in which Chaplin rediscovered, through the story of a young dancer and an aging clown, the world of music hall entertainment in which he first made his mark.